Live, live, live. Are we live? Okay, CL Creative Space. There's Stephanie. All right, hi friends. So, what a week. As you all know, we have been honoring women in March, and in continuation of that, we are talking today with a talented woman. Stephanie is going to join me today. It's a heavy time for a lot of us. We're going to keep this momentum and keep the positivity. So thank you for joining. Let's bring Stephanie in. Stephanie, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Hi.
Hi.
You look beautiful, honey.
Oh, thanks.
I'm turning my volume up. Give me a second.
Oh, no problem.
I was literally out of breath for the 30 seconds. It's been one of those days.
Yeah.
So thanks for waiting for me. I was a little late.
Oh,
Thank you.
Don't seriously, it's really chill. It's Friday afternoon. We can relax into this one.
It was really nice to chat with you earlier today too. So thank you for that. Just a little check-in. I know we started vibing and then I was like, we got to get off the phone.
Yeah, there's plenty to talk about, I'm sure. So are you at CL right now?
Yeah. I'm at CL. I'm in our really sweet little phone booth. I'll try to get a little view. Look at this little telephone table that we have. And it's soundproofed. So it's just this really sweet little room that we have here for privacy and for nursing mothers. So it does, double, triple, quadruple duty because it's now our IG Live.
IG Live room.
Why not? Really busy over here today. So I want to introduce myself a little more formally. My name is Miriam. For those of you who I haven't met yet. And I manage studios here at CL Creative Space. I tend to bulldoze through this part and I forget that not everyone is familiar with our space, and we're in Berkeley and we're studio and event spaces. We are also building out in our second year of building and supporting the local creative community. And so part of that mission is certainly to connect with like-minded spirits out here, especially women. We're always focused on, our team is women-led, and Stephanie, we're so excited to feature you this month as well, and hopefully more in the future. So tell us a little bit about just your name and where you're based these days, and let's go from there.
Yeah. So my name is Stephanie Quintana. I go equally by Stephanie and L, which is why a lot of times you see things signed like SL or Stephanie L. I grew up in Los Angeles. Born and raised in a city of movies and television and this crazy imagination. And so grew up there, but I didn't actually grow up in Hollywood. I grew up in East Valley, which I always tell people is the not glamorous ghetto. There's Compton and Inglewood, which people sing about. It has a whole thing. It wasn't there. I grew up outside the projects and a proper concrete jungle. And so I came to photography when I was around 6 years old. We weren't allowed to go in the front art, it was actually at the time of like the Rodney King riots. And so in
Mhm.
order to keep me very entertained, my mom gave me her 35 millimeter camera and showed me how to use.
Wow.
She was like,
Wow.
anything you want in the house, like you want to make it into a photo studio, you want to like, do all of this
Yeah,
stuff.
what a time. That's really cool. Wow. Go
Yeah, so it's like
mom.
really cool. Both my
Yeah.
parents were very like interested in the arts. My dad actually worked in finance and went to
Mhm.
UCLA. My mom also was very interested in that. So like I came from like a background where there was like art and reading, and my dad when I was 8 asked me to describe infinity to him. So like even though I grew up in this kind of like, by the way, don't ask your 8-year-old child how to describe infinity. I'm pretty sure that's like some sort of like mental mind game. So came from this like really weird background where I was fully aware of the fact that I had some kind of privilege, but
Mhm.
also like fully aware that I didn't. Um,
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
went,
It's really interesting
it was
duality, sort of.
weird
Yeah.
duality where you're like, I know there's something different here.
Hmm.
But yeah, so I, went to schools like on the good side. I played classical violin, did ballet, rode horses, did the whole thing, but always kind of coming back to like where I was, like where I was from up until I was
Yeah.
12.
Yeah.
So yeah, that informs so much of like me being like, oh, I'm not my narrative, this thing that I am is not included in the
Hmm.
narrative that I see in the city of like production of movies, of film.
Right.
And so, yeah, I had my first photo internship at 16 for a celebrity fashion photographer.
Hmm.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
so that's the origin story of how I ended up here.
Yeah. It's really interesting too to, to call out that, what it's like to be in multiple spaces, and I mean, you have one identity, right?
Yeah.
And yet, I mean, can we talk about code switching? I mean, just to
Oh,
be in like different spaces where you're like, I am still one person, right?
yeah,
Am
I
I?
think I am. Or am I
Who
like
am I?
split us like
Yeah. Yeah.
but
In your formative years too.
they're so formative. And I think that what was really interesting about it was that because I came from a household that was always questioning, always asking like why or how or why do you feel this way? Like it
Hmm.
made it so that I very at a young age start to formulate like this idea. I was like, oh, if I take pictures, then I can like
Hmm.
make stories happen, right? Like I
Yeah.
can make something else. I can make a different reality happen.
Yeah.
And I would like ask like the neighbor girl to come over and I would like dress her up and like because I had like my grandmother's Japanese and we had kimonos and so I would, like put her in kimonos and like hang out.
Amazing.
That was
Yeah. Yeah.
a
Yeah.
really weird household.
Yeah.
It was a little bit hippie, it was a little bit strange, and my parents like never said like or never like no, don't do that. They were just like anything to keep you from like playing out front. Yeah, whatever you want.
Yeah. They were like to infinity, Elle.
Yeah, to
Come on.
infinity. Go. Just describe infinity again. By the way, my answer was infinity is a circle. That was my answer.
Accurate?
I was like,
I
not
could,
wrong, right?
I
Not wrong.
mean, it's definitely up for debate.
Yeah. Just to
Let's
continue.
talk about the time space continuum.
Yeah, let's just go there for the next like few minutes. But
Wow, your family sounds really interesting. I feel like that's so much material for your, just creative outlets, right?
yeah.
Because you are a photographer, and
Mhm.
do you explore like other mediums as well as a creative person, or is that your favorite? I mean, at 6 years old with your first camera is just so beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, photography's always been my favorite. I've like dabbled a little bit in film. I write a lot. That's probably
Mm-hmm.
like next to photography, like the next thing. Like I am constantly writing and trying to like formulate my ideas into like sense. Like I have a lot of thoughts on like what does it mean to represent people in the photographic space? Like
Hmm.
beyond just we need to have representation, but what does that representation mean? Like when you
Hmm.
actually think about like the ubiquity of the white body versus the ubiquity of the black or brown or Asian body. And as we start to like move forward in culture, why is it important to have these bodies occupy these spaces? And part of the reason that that is so important is because the way that we view people in our imagination, the spaces they occupy, is actually then how we treat them in real life. And if you want to start to see like real change, you need to shift the cultural imagination around those bodies, around those places. And so for me, that's really like the core, like at the very center of everything I do, writing, photography, film. It's how do I start to like revisionist history, these like narratives that we've been told so long about our bodies, of like
Yeah.
where we should exist, how we should exist. And like even things like how many like times do you like turn on a film and like the brown person is still like either the sexy person or the bad guy or like the whatever, and like the white person is still your hero, still your, you know, sexual like desirable person. And I'm like, we're in 2021 and these are still the narratives. We still can't like break that down. And until we do
Mhm.
that, like this body still is like the exotic, sexy body and not the girl next door, even though I am more than likely the girl next door.
Right, right.
Sorry, that was
Yeah,
like
and
a
I
TED talk. Sorry, guys.
no, I know. That's what Cecilia and I, it's funny you say TED Talk because that's like one of her favorite lines. She's like, are we having a TED Talk right now? I'm like, I guess.
Yeah, sorry for the TED talk. It's just on my mind constantly.
Constantly. And I love that you say that you're writing and that you bring that up because I mean, I've worked in the photography industry and in advertising for a long time. And um, one of the prevailing issues that I just have never been able to get past is that, you know, when we talk about bodies doing the work of advertising, there is no narrative. It is very superficial, you know, and when we're asking people to show up in their body, bring their essence, because I mean, if you've seen someone, which you of course have, but if you've seen someone glow in a photograph, you know, yes, there is magic in the lens and that the camera work, and you're also having this like synergy with this with the person in your photo, you know, so bringing all of this. And yet when we talk about advertising products with these precious people who are bringing their essence, there's no narrative that goes along with it, and it's so easy to just appropriate, have tokenism. And you know, looking back like in the era of, you know, the first like, you know, coined supermodels and such, I mean, part of their iconic impression, especially women of color, was this like a lot of what you're talking about, if this sort of like exoticized thing or, you know, hypersexualized thing. And yes, some of that like personal spirit was there, but more often than not, it was painted or emphasized in like a negative way.
Mhm.
And I felt like the genuine narrative was not there, at least for me growing up. That was not my impression. And I was looking for it. So I was very conscious of that at the time. It's not my impression. So the fact that, you know, you can talk about, you know, photographing people and bringing that, because clearly you're very intellectual and you grew up in an intellectual family, and being able to articulate those ideas is such a it's such a tool. I, you know, it's really powerful because a lot of people feel this in their gut and they're not able to say it in the way that you just said it so eloquently. Um, so I just want to like acknowledge that, you know, it's very powerful to be able to have someone who can present the photographic representation and move it beyond like a superficial
Yeah.
place. So
Yeah. And
that
I
was
mean,
amazing.
oh, yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's it's one of those things where I often think about things like even when we think about the narrative of like an advertisement image, right? Like, and we do, it's like it's not deep, but there's this bigger narrative that it's arching into, right? Like this single advertisement image here, this single advertisement image here, this single
Yeah.
advertisement here, and they're all part of a super narrative. They're all part of this like, bigger narrative that we all subscribe to. And when you think of even something like a cereal ad, it's actually telling us who deserves to have healthy cereal, who deserves to have a family that is integrated. Like all of those things that we're seeing, even like though they feel superficial, are actually part of this much larger narrative of who is cared for and how they are cared for.
Yeah.
And actually don't see like brown people, black people, queer people within those narratives, it actually reinforces the idea that by their absence, they aren't actually deserving of those places. And so for me, when I like talk about narrative, I'm also addressing that like larger narrative of like who deserves to eat organic, like who deserves to like get to school and like be safe. Like even that idea, like we're talking so much in our narrative, like who deserves to be safe is
Yeah.
also forced within those places, within those like bigger arching storylines, who deserves to be loved and how they deserve to be loved. And so, yeah, I'm always like, when we look at an advertising image, and it can literally be something like, I love Cheerios, it's heart healthy. But if you are never seen in an ad where you believe that you deserve to be heart healthy, then it makes it easy to not think that you want that. Uh,
Absolutely. And it's so easy for people to downplay or minimize the point that you're making, but I agree with you. It is intricately involved in every aspect of our lives. Like, I mean, there is no category of our lives that aren't impacted by the subconscious and like subliminal
yeah.
messaging that you just absorb from the youngest age. Um, and also we want to break through some of these stereotypes of what belongs to who. I mean, we just literally in my house last night, with my 8-year-old daughter who is obsessed with horses and probably got that impression from watching, the quintessential like horse films. She's been around horses a little bit, but she wants to ride. She's hungry for it. It's, we're in shelter in place, so it's been
Yeah.
a year of talking about this in the house and not action. But anyway,
Yeah. Oh.
and my husband and I were like delicately trying to have this conversation with her last night about it's like identity and this community and culture around like riding horses and like racing horse and like this whole whether a community, what community and what culture can identify with that, and elitism and all these kind of things. And we're saying all these things about kind of, and she's like, you mean English writing styling? Are is that what you're saying? We're like, oh yeah, that's okay. She's like, yeah, it's centered in like, that's English writing, it's European. We're like, cool, okay, so you already, all right, yeah, that's
Yeah.
all we're talking about, that's it, that's all we
That's what
really
we're
want to
talking about.
say. But
Yeah.
she was like that doesn't have like that's only one part of it, like people don't get to claim horses and et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, yeah, these are the nuances that unless you're having the conversation, you just watch a Disney horse film and you're going to see, one representation and say like, well, that's not me. There's
Yeah.
not a place for me.
Yeah.
And this tender message, like no one wants to stomp on your horse dream by saying like, we don't want to associate with this elitist European, style and culture of riding. But she was like, no, you guys, like, I'm cool. I already got it. Like,
Yeah. If she's like, I got it. And it's also like, if she wants to be in that space, the more girls and women that look like her occupying that space means that like, and that's always been a struggle for me, because I was always like, maybe I should just go into social justice. Like when I was younger, I wanted to be a human rights lawyer, right? Like, and in
mm,
my mind, I was like, well, if I'm a human rights lawyer, then I'll be really making a difference, right? Like that's where
mhm,
you're like social justice and like changing
yeah,
the laws. And I had this like idealist idea of like what that means. But then I had this moment of being like, I can change all the laws in the world, but unless you're actually changing the hearts and minds of what people believe deserves those laws, you're always going to be fighting an uphill battle. You're always going to be like pushing upwards because you're trying to talk to a world that doesn't yet exist in their mind. A world where
mm,
like a brown woman is also an English like horseback rider, which I totally said that wrong. Um, and like, all of these things, right? Like what belongs to who? And in a way, it's like, well, yeah, she should be able to. It should be that ubiquitous. Brown girl, white girl, Asian girl, doesn't matter. Like it shouldn't
yeah,
be belong to any particular culture. Yes, everything has an origin, but it doesn't mean that we live in a time where that origin should be exclusionary of the people who want to also participate. And then by
Right.
doing, you actually start to be like, oh, yeah, that girl can be a horseback rider. That guy can be a, whatever. Because what happens right now is we walk around in our minds, like, and I think this is where that subconscious comes in, right? Like, you see somebody on the street and everybody makes a gut reaction as to who, what they are: enemy, friend. And when you do that, and the only things that you've been fed about somebody is a very particular narrative, and brown and black bodies have had this forever, people see you and they go, enemy or stranger, enemy or alien.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they don't go, oh, horseback rider, athlete, doctor. Like, their mind isn't confused because there's only one singular narrative being told around those bodies. And so once you start to break that down and you allow people to occupy places in the imagination, in real life, it makes it more complicated to like identify somebody as singular. It makes it,
Yeah.
hard to be judgmental about where they come from or what they deserve. And I think that for me, that thing is so much a part of what you're talking about. Like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
she's like, yeah, mom, I know where it's from, but I want to be in that space. And that's great. Like, it's so also that she like understands that already. Like, kids are
Well,
so
it's
special.
humbling though, because we also like it is a new generation. I mean, so and a lot of like the work that you're doing and the work that's been starting to come about in a on a broader scale, they are being exposed to it now, like in real
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So, but not everyone. I mean, she has the privilege of parents who are talking about this kind of shit, and a community that is, and so it's certainly not everyone, but to see that it is having an impact
Yeah.
already is encouraging. And I just want to, you mentioned our perceptions of people, and that sort of enemy, friend, stranger thing, and also pray. you know let's Because we've talked about um this targeting of women is just we're in such a raw time right now, and having the spotlight on these crimes is, I think, hopefully really opening the lid off of a lot of really like sensitive raw topics, as far as like sexualizing women's bodies. And Asian American and the Pacific community is just, I mean, it's beyond words, and I'm not gonna try to, I can't do it justice, but I know we touched on it a little bit earlier when we talked. And I know here at CL, we're just trying to figure out what else we can do as well. And I think that this nuance of being like, yeah, we can celebrate our sensuality as women, and we deserve to be able to do that, and we deserve to be safe. The
Yeah.
two do not cancel each other out. Like, that's
Other out. I think that as we talk about like women's bodies, women's sexuality, women's, you know, just that, like just on the baseline, like it's still such a fraught subject. It's still so much about like who deserves to get to own women's bodies. Like, why are we still having this discussion? The body, the reproductive things, like women, that's our choice. We get to make those decisions. I think when I look at how women, especially women of color, have been represented in the media for years, it has been the hypersexualization, the domineering of white men over their bodies, whether that's in the stereotype, whether that's in the fact that, like, when you think of like the princesses versus the sexy girls in Disney films, like where you stand.
yeah.
Like, as a brown woman, like that you're like that character, you're sexy, you're maybe even a little slutty, like that's what you're told that you should be. And when you're told you should be that, you're also telling men that that's how they should treat you. And I think what people forget is that not only are you telling people this is how you should act, you're telling people this is how you should treat them. And that's where the visual world comes into play. That's where the
Yeah.
stories about yourselves come to
Right.
play. Like, and we aren't writing those stories. Brown
Right.
women writing stories about brown women's bodies. Like, women aren't writing stories around their sexuality and their sexual narrative, like, as a majority. And so
No.
until there's that autonomy to tell your own story, to tell like what it means to be a brown woman fully embodied as a mother, as a daughter, as a sexual being, then you are not actually like, you're never getting that like reflected back to you in the world around you. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think such a like, we talk about the symptoms of these things when you see violence against a body, but you aren't
Mhm.
talking about the cause. Like, and the cause is the way people are represented, the way they have been treated, these systems that have like come into place to make sure that people stay in certain places in order to keep the power structures in line.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what supremacy is. Like, bottom line, that's what supremacy is. So yeah, I mean, I hate to get like heavy, like on a Friday afternoon, but I feel like I just keep seeing this thing where people are like, why does this keep happening? And I'm like, because we don't change the stories we tell about people. Because we,
That's right.
and also what people forget is we also keep reinforcing those stories over and over and over again. Um, so yeah, it's so complicated. Um,
And for your, it is it's so complicated. I mean, it you know, it goes into all kinds of, societal issues that also, until there's an outlet for people's needs and health, etc., then, from just even an economic standpoint, a lot of these patterns are going to continue. So, we do our part on the side of media and communications and representation and image making, and also the work in the economy certainly has to improve.
yeah,
Um, and it is beyond heavy. I mean, we want to keep celebrating also like the joy, right?
yeah,
Because we are strong and empowered and positive and loving beings. And so, like, to continue to just, we had a meeting, our core team this morning. So we're working on a project to celebrate voices and also give people opportunity to share their personal stories of trauma and healing and their journey of healing and what that looks like for them. So anyway, we're working on that, and it is such heavy work. And we were like, okay, we have got to keep the thread of joy
so deeply important. Like, so
throughout. Right. and
like,
and so yeah, and like acknowledge the heaviness, and also like, okay, like whoever is thriving is pulling up those who are not thriving. Like, this is our unity. This is our community.
yeah,
This is how we have to grow and change
yeah,
together, and to like keep that spirit going. People are doing this work already and have been doing it for a long ass time, way predates me.
yeah,
So like, how, like, show me what the hell I need to do, like,
yeah. Just
we're so here for it.
yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing. I'm always like, there's all of this heaviness going on. There's all of these things, but like just coming together as like women, just coming together as like people of color and celebrating what it means to be you, and like like putting that out there and being like, yes, I can be a dual. I can have duality within my life.
Yeah.
I can both the light and the darkness at the same time. And those things do not need to be separate. I can mourn and have joy. I can see my progress and understand where that progress has come from.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's like, I always have to come back to that. I always have to come
Yeah.
back. Like, I do this in
Well
order
said.
to spread joy. I do this, like,
Mhm.
I do the work that I do so that, like, people can still find themselves, still see themselves reflected in beauty, still themselves reflected in the stories around them. And by doing that, they feel empowered. They feel empowered to know the space that they can occupy, to take up space and to not shrink back, and to know that, like, there's people working out there to, like, pull a chair to the table and not
Mhm.
have it be a plastic pull-up chair while this is a trend right now. Like, while people are talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, like, no, 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 it's a permanent chair. Like, we aren't going to go back into, like, we're not going to go back and be like, take the
No
crumbs that were
setting. Yeah.
like, I'm so happy that we're able to have these kinds of conversations and that people are more receptive to listening to what it has meant to be a minority in this country, what it's meant to be a person of color. Because I do think, like, I have friends who are like, I didn't know the Japanese were interned. And I was like, yeah, that's a huge part of history.
Pretty
Um,
big.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that this has been like just having these talks, being open, and then also like having moments of laughter and just being like, you know what? Like, I'm going to shut off my computer today. I'm going to go take a hot shower. I'm going to hug my child. I'm going to like play with my dog because at the end of the day, like, we're still deeply, deeply human. And then
Mhm.
as much as this pandemic has worn on us and as much as everything has worn on us, there's still these like moments of connection that allow us to be people. And through that, we actually start to like bridge gaps and create community and have the world that we've imagined, that, you know, Martin Luther King's dream can really exist if we really start to embrace the people around us.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, with some humility for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyways, I feel like I could talk to you for ages. But I just saw and I was like, oh, I think we're supposed to talk for like 10 minutes. So
I love it. I'm here for it. I have to tell you, I needed this conversation too because yeah, been it's been a tough week and yeah, I mean your point about just being able to be all those things for each other. I so appreciate like my team at CL because they're heck loud right now, by the way. Can you hear? I don't know what's going on.
I hear them.
We're filming. I'm going to tell you a little teaser, a little leak. We're filming a daughter day, which you'll totally appreciate, which is basically, I don't know if you see in our TITs
I haven't been.
videos. You should check them out. We post them on social, but they're like our Tune In Tuesdays acronym you can figure out,
Yeah.
TIT. And so we're doing like this daughter day at work. It's, you know, it's all spoof. They're all just funny.
That's so
So we all have our daughters in and they're basically being us. And it's pretty funny.
that's pretty
Well, I
pretty.
think that's what I can hear is like all this chaos. And Marion is on our team. She directs and shoots them and they're hilarious. But anyway, it's just yeah, we're trying to do so much and I appreciate you saying that, like being able to be strong but also be human and we always say like we make space to be human here. And it's like, what does that mean? It means like, you know, a horrific event happens in the country and you can talk about it together in your workspace because you can't pretend that it's not traumatic
Yeah.
and impacting all of us. So
Yeah.
that is okay.
Yeah.
You know,
It's like
we need that.
that's making space for all the emotions, like not just the light ones, but also the heavy ones, but also
Yeah.
when like, but also I feel like oftentimes what happens is the heavy ones, like, it's like, you know, heat like rises, cold falls to the ground. And it's easy to get caught in that and not even notice the like beautiful moments that are happening because those don't get celebrated. And I think that's something that people often forget is that the beautiful moments within the communities of color don't get celebrated.
Yeah.
And so what we see oftentimes represented by of ourselves is often the sad moments, the heavy moments, all of that stuff. And so it's kind of up to us to make sure we celebrate those in a big way when
Mhm.
they happen.
Yeah.
so that
Good way.
we all
Yeah.
be like, no, no,
Yeah.
no, it's not all of this. We're not constantly like being trodden on. We actually do have moments of like happiness and health, and that helps you to move yourself forward.
Yeah, vibrancy. You have to. And then when you can't, you have to have your people there that are
Yeah.
like, I'm pulling you forward.
Yeah. I feel like if it
Okay.
of people that like I have around me, I would probably just be like in the fetal position behind my couch. Like it would just be me like holding my knees and crying. So, um, yeah,
Yeah. Yes. Give
yeah,
thanks to them.
yeah. I mean, I'm constantly sending the messages, being like, "Thank you so much for being my friend. I know I can be obnoxious." I
Well,
just,
I can tell that you probably have like your wheels spinning all the time and you're writing and you're probably shooting all the time. Like before we go, just if you feel comfortable, I would love to hear like some, I don't know, something that's brewing with you or some creative endeavor that you've been thinking about or like you're on the cusp of, or I don't know, anything that you just want to share with like our community, and then we can just send all our positive energy and towards that flourishing.
yeah, I mean, I'm in the middle of a transition from like being where I am in life as a creative and kind of like moving towards working with like individuals on how to like generate more creativity. Which
Mm-hmm.
is like more of a like behind the scenes, like behind the scenes, like kind of
Yeah.
moving out of image making and empowering
Mm-hmm.
other people to be
Mm-hmm.
able to create better stories and better images and really kind of take that to the next level. So that's really what I've been working on behind the scenes. It's still a very baby idea.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm really excited to like start to see it like grow and become a thing. I'm temporarily calling it the arc, and
Mm-hmm.
about like that idea of like a place of like safety where things come together and everything is included, and is also like a movement. So yeah, I mean that's really what I've been like working on. That's what all these like posties next to me are about, like just kind of figuring out what I'm gonna do next.
Mapping it out. That's
Mapping.
exciting.
Yeah, I'm really stoked on it. Yeah.
That sounds beautiful. And yeah, so aligned with like making images and making change and making, supporting people to make more images and make more change and like, hey, and yeah,
Yeah,
grow
I just
that movement.
get to like people's ideas. Like you're stuck, like I just want to see the world like,
Mhm.
become the most like beautifully like positive inclusive place, which is like some like utopia fantasy. But like if I can
Hey,
help things like get there, and I always tell people I'm like, we cannot have the world we want to exist unless it exists in our imagination. And so I am happy to help people like have that vision and like bring the things together to carry visions forward.
yeah, yeah, everything starts with a vision.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I'm gonna speak it into existence, and it's hard work because we're breaking our own patterns as well in the process.
yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Anyways,
Well, that's beautiful. I wish you well with that, and I want to hear more about it. Please, please,
yes.
please
Yes.
share.
I
So,
will.
yeah, and I love your stories about your family. I feel like if you're not sharing that with the rest of the world, you should. There's probably so much more. Sounds
Oh,
really interesting.
I mean my parents are crazy. I love them, but they are definitely their own as all parents are. Um, yeah, they had me when they were real young. So just imagine if you had a child when you were 21.
Yeah, you were there, like experiment
Yeah,
of
definitely an
right.
experience.
Yeah. I know
Uh,
age is such a funny thing, the hindsight.
yeah.
It's interesting.
Like, if I like at 21 was not a person. Oh, somebody asked how they can follow. My Instagram is SELLE_Quintana. But yeah, so
Yeah. Well, we'll post it. We'll post when we share the video too. We'll make sure we link you up. Link
this
and sync.
Lincoln,
Yeah.
and this
Yeah.
is so fun. I'm so excited. Also, just nice to see your face because I only heard your voice, so that's always great.
Yeah.
Um,
More to come. It was really genuinely lovely chatting with you. I
Thank you.
appreciate the time.
Have a beautiful weekend. Get some rest.
Yeah.
And I can't
Like,
wait to.
yeah, you too. Take care.